Now, our next speaker is going to be Kathryn Andries. You know, in my work with the hypnosis, I see thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and they all want to know the same thing. I call it the universal question that everybody wants to know. Can you figure out what that is? What is my purpose? Everybody wants to know the same thing. What's my purpose? Why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? So I call it the eternal question. Well, Kathryn has written the books that I think will help you on this question. There's two here. The first one is called Soul Choices, the 6 paths to find your life's purpose. Soul Choices. And then the second one is a workbook on how to find your path. So it's 6 paths to find your life purpose. And Kathryn is going to explain what this is all about. So Kathryn Andries. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. I am so excited to be here because in 2002, I self-published the book, Soul Choices. So for about 11 years, I was on my own. And when I found Ozark Mountain Publishing, it was so wonderful to finally have the support and the guidance of a wonderful publishing company and people like Dolores and the staff. So this is wonderful. The eternal question is so true. What is my life purpose? That's what propelled me to write the book. And today, I'm also going to be talking about how we can understand our life purpose through our relationships, because I think that's the second biggest question that I hear in my work is, what's going on with my relationships, or when am I going to meet Mr. or Mrs. Perfect and get married? So we're going to have a really fun time, and there's going to be some interaction. So if you're in the front row, you might want to run and hide if you don't want me to point out some things that we're going to do today. Okay, so 6 paths to understanding relationships. One of the reasons that most of us are here is because we're in search of enlightenment. So just raise your hand if you're wanting to achieve enlightenment this lifetime. Raise your hand. I thought so, a lot of people. Well, there's really 2 roads that I have found to become enlightened. And the first one is kind of the old-fashioned way, which is what I call the cave life. This is where you decide you're going to reach enlightenment by going off to some cave, and you spend about 20 years alone meditating and pondering life's questions. And that's one way to do it, and there's a lot of great masters that have attained enlightenment that way. And then there's the second way, which is through people. In other words, you integrate into society, and through your interactions with people, you evolve. So it's time to make a choice. Do you want to go off and live in the cave? It's kind of easier, right? No one's going to be pushing your buttons and annoying you, and you get to be in peace. Or you can work out your enlightenment through people. And today, more and more, we're finding that integrating into society and being with people is the path that we're taking to enlightenment. So as we search for enlightenment, we look for tools. And one of the greatest tools is right next to you. So if you look at the person next to you, there's your tool for enlightenment. And why? Well, people have some annoying habits. And one of those habits is pushing all your little buttons. Because one of the greatest stimulators of your karma and your lessons is people. Because if you go off into the cave, there's nobody that's going to push your buttons and bring up the stuff that you need to look at. So tools are right at your doorstep. It's your next door neighbor. It's your annoying boss. It's your partner. It's your kids. It's everybody. Those are your tools. So when we talk about finding our life's purpose, or where do great relationships begin, it's all the same. It begins with you. Looking in the mirror. All the great mystics have said, know thyself. And that is so true. If you do not know yourself, it's very difficult to have satisfying, wonderful relationships, because if you're confused about yourself, You will not know what you need in a relationship, what you want in a relationship. And if you don't know your life purpose, it's difficult to choose partners and friends that are going to support your mission along the way. So how do we find ourselves? How do we know ourselves? There's many great tools. There's meditation. Today, I'm going to talk about 6 tools that I have used over the past 20 years that are described in my book, Soul Choices. Some of these I actually like to call intuitive sciences, because as you work with them, you will find they are so exact and scientific. Astrology, numerology, palmistry, iris analysis, that's kind of a new one. Past lives and family birth order. All of these 6 sciences have similarities, and they all work with finding out what are our gifts and talents, what are our lessons, and that reveals our life purpose, and that reveals a lot about our relationships, why we choose the people we do, who would be the best people for us. If we want to find these answers, we need only look to these 6 intuitive sciences. As Garnett spoke yesterday in his lecture, that his spirit guide said, when you're born, you forget your life purpose. It would be too easy if you knew it. And I loved that, because that's where my work comes in, and it says, yes, we do forget our life purpose when we're born. So how are we going to begin searching for it? I look to these 6 intuitive sciences to help me find the answers. So the power of the 6 paths, or these intuitive sciences, they're powerful because they reveal what are our needs, what are our desires, what's our love style, how do we communicate, what are our sexual needs, what are our nurturing instincts, our emotional expression, and more. They will reveal everything about you, all our past lives, and everything we've said and done through past lives. That is the power of these 6 paths, to give us the answers to what we're trying to understand about our life purpose and our relationships. So as we talk today, these are some questions I want you to consider. Do you want conflict or harmony in your life? Do you want to learn through pain and conflict, or joy and love? And there is a choice. I prefer, personally, to learn through joy and love. And it is totally possible to have joyous, loving relationships that will still stimulate you, and you can grow without having constant conflict in your life. Another question to ask is, do I want someone with all the same influence as me? Opposites, complementary, or dissimilar? It's a choice. And how about a blend of them all? That makes it really exciting. What I've found through my work with individuals is when you choose people with the same influences, in other words, if you're a Leo sun sign and you choose someone with a Leo sun sign, it creates wonderful friendships because you have the same interests, you click, you come from the same viewpoint. When you choose to be around people with opposite influences, we hold the opposite inside of ourselves. So that tends to create this mystery, this attraction, because we want to know what's inside of ourselves. So if I'm a Leo sun sign on the outside, my opposite's Aquarius inside. So I mysteriously would be drawn to Aquarians to figure out that part of myself. When we choose complementary influences, that tends to create very supportive relationships, which are wonderful. For example, my husband's a Scorpio sun sign and I'm a Virgo, and Scorpio and Virgo are very complementary because Scorpio being water, water nourishes earth, earth gives direction to water, so you create this wonderful support system. And then you get dissimilar relationships where there's just really nothing to hold the two people together. There's no opposite mystery, there's no similarity of interest, so it's just kind of like you really don't hook up much with people who have dissimilar influences because there's nothing drawing you together. So you ask yourself these questions. And then lastly, a couple rules about relationships. Similar lessons attract. In terms of life purpose, you're going to come along and meet people who have similar lessons than you because you're attracted to each other because you need to learn the same things. Opposites attract. We all know that. Raise your hand if you've ever had a draw to somebody who's your opposite. Yeah, a lot of you, okay? And similar missions attract. I mean, look at Dolores Cannon and her family. They're all around the publishing company. They have similar missions. And it's very wonderful to be around people who have the same mission because you can support each other along the way. Why the 6 paths? Can't I do just one? 6 paths? That takes a long time. Well, I'm kind of particular about wanting to leave no stone unturned. So when I started out on this path, my first path was astrology when I was looking for my life purpose. And I got so many questions answered, but I said, maybe there's more. And then I found numerology, and numerology opened up more paths and parts of myself that astrology didn't. I said, well, maybe there's more. And I looked into my eyes and I got more answers. So my answer to that is, if you only do one path, you're going to find there's a lot more information that you're missing. So I encourage you to do the 6 paths when you're looking for your life purpose and the perfect mate. So we're going to start with astrology. And, you know, the pickup line in the bars used to be, what's your sign? But it's actually a great question to ask people because you can learn so much about a person through their sun sign. And astrology is embedded in our culture. If anybody has been to the Lascaux caves in France, they have paintings on those caves that they say are over 12,000 years old. They found astrological glyphs that look like the Taurus and the Scorpio glyphs on those caves over 12,000 years old. The power of 12. There's 12 zodiac signs, as we know. There's also 12 disciples. So here's something fun for you to do. I encourage you to find what each disciple, what zodiac sign belongs to that, because it's very similar. And I've done my research and I'm still working on it, but the 12 disciples relate to the 12 different zodiacal influences. So whatever your sun sign is, that's a big part of your life purpose, and you can study about the disciple that relates to that sign to see how you can live out your life purpose. So I said that in order to have great relationships, you need to be on target with your life purpose. And if you're on target with your life purpose, you have a better chance of having fulfilling, satisfying relationships. So I love to study astrology charts of famous people or people who I think are doing some interesting stuff. So this is actually Steven Spielberg's astrology chart. And he's definitely on target with his life purpose. In astrology, we have 12 houses, and each house relates to a different area of life. And if we look at his chart, the 5th house is the house of creativity. And I would definitely say that Steven Spielberg is very creative. He has his moon, Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury in the 5th house. So his life purpose is all about being creative and bringing out creative endeavors through visual things. And in addition to that, he has Scorpio influencing his 5th house. Scorpio is the zodiac sign that relates to the metaphysical and the occult. Scorpio is about bringing up everything that's hidden. So if we really look at Steven Spielberg's films, I mean, look at E.T. It's about extraterrestrials. That's all Scorpio stuff. So he's totally on target with his life purpose. So if we look to astrology to help us understand our relationships, there's a couple key planets that we want to look at. And the first one's Mercury. And Mercury is the planet of communication. And we all know that the basis of a great relationship is having great communication, is it not? So you have to look at your Mercury to understand how you communicate, and look at your partner's Mercury to see how she or he communicates. And then you have to see, are we going to communicate? Are we going to be on the same page? I had an interesting time when I was dating this one person, and I was really confused in this relationship. I didn't know what was going on or what to do. So I took my astrology chart and his astrology chart to the astrologer, and I said, help me. She looked at the charts for a few minutes, and she looked at me and she said, you two must have really interesting arguments. I said, yeah, they go for hours and nothing gets resolved. Well, our Mercuries were totally in conflict. I mean, our communication was terrible. It wasn't going to work. And then, of course, we've all heard of the planet Venus. And Charmaine's talk this morning about returning to Lemuria reminds me of Venus, because Venus is the goddess of love. So Venus on your chart, in terms of your life purpose, describes what you need to learn about love and appreciation. And in relationships, it works if your Venus and your partner's Venus are similar, because that means you appreciate the same things, you love in the same way. And Venus on a man's chart will actually show what he sees as the ultimate woman, the goddess of his dreams. So if your Venus matches up with his, he will always be attracted to you because he will see you as that goddess. And then we look to Mars. Now, Mars is the god of war. It's also the god of aggression and action. So in terms of our life purpose, Mars describes a lot about our passion and what we're here to do. And those of you who are following your life purpose, your Mars is activated and you feel turned on and great. And so Mars, yes, it will show how you and your partner sizzle together. Are you passionate about the same things in life? And Mars on a woman's astrology chart shows what she sees as the ultimate man, the male goddess. And so if your Mars matches up with hers, she will always be attracted to you. Now the moon on our astrology charts in terms of our life purpose relates to where we've been in past lives and how we're going to nurture people. And that's very important in relationships because we all want to be nurtured and we have to have those emotional needs met. So on my astrology chart, for example, my moon is in the zodiac sign of Gemini, which means how I nurture people is through teaching, and I'm a teacher. So I will, if you come to me with a problem, I'll find the answer and teach you. And so I look for a partner who is mentally stimulating to me because that's nurturing to me. And then Saturn is a very important planet to look at in terms of relationships because it's going to show what lessons you have to learn. What is your karmic need in order to evolve? So when you get two people with the similar Saturn on their charts, you two can evolve together because you have the same lesson. Now, it might be the blind leading the blind if you have the same lesson, but you can both support each other, so that's wonderful. So let's look at some examples. This is an example of a relationship that didn't turn out too wonderfully, Prince Charles and Lady Diana. And I just want to point out a couple interesting things about their charts. Prince Charles, his Venus and his sun sign are in Scorpio in the 4th house. Now, Scorpio is also one of the zodiac sign that likes to hide things. And as we know, Prince Charles kind of hid the fact that he had a secret interest in another woman. And it's in the 4th house, which means most of his emotional energy is going to go to his family. Okay, and that's pretty obvious with the position that he was in. Now, Lady Diana, in contrast, her sun sign is in Cancer in the 7th house. And the 7th house is the house of the public and your partner. So this shows that she is going to put her entire self-esteem in the hands of her husband, whoever she marries. So if she doesn't get the support and love from her husband, she's just going to crumble. And that's exactly what happened. And the other thing about her is Cancer, the zodiac sign of Cancer, is very sensitive. And so she became overwhelmed with all the public attention. And as we know, the little Cancer crab, when it gets overwhelmed, wants to run in the crab shell. But how could she run and hide? She was the princess. So she had nowhere to go. So if she had come to me before she got married, I would have talked to her about her astrology chart, and things could have been different in terms of how she handled things. The other interesting thing about Prince Charles, his moon, which is how he nurtures, is in the 10th house of career. So his whole emotional energy was focused on his career, not so much on his relationship with Princess Diana. Okay, Another famous couple that's kind of fun to look at is Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. And they were a wonderful match in contrast to Princess Diana and Charles, because Elizabeth Taylor's moon, which is her emotions, is in Scorpio, which means she's incredibly intense, and she craves intensity in her relationships. And she matches up with Richard Burton because his sun sign is in Scorpio, so he's also very intense, and they both needed a partner who was very intense. They have so many similarities in terms of their life purpose. The ascendant, which is your personality, who you like to hang out with, it's the same. Libra and Libra. They like to do the same things, so they were the best of pals and friends. In addition, the descendant describes your purpose in relationships. It's the same for both of them, Aries and Aries. Aries is the ram, it's the fire sign. They both wanted fiery, intense relationships. Could have been up and down, which of course they were. But they wanted the same things, similar life purposes as well. I think that's why it worked out so great. Another really cool thing you can do in astrology is what we call a composite chart. And that's where we take the astrology chart of one person and combine it with another person. And then you see the purpose of the two people together. When you're in a relationship, you create a third entity. You have you, your partner, and the relationship. So the relationship has a purpose. And if we look at Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, one of the neat things we see is the 12th house is full of planets, important ones, the Sun, Mercury, and Mars. Now, the 12th house in terms of our life purpose is all about our karma from past lives and what needs to be worked out. So when you see a chart like this between two people, you know that they've been together in many past lives, and they have a lot of past life stuff that they're still working out together, which is why they just couldn't keep apart from each other. They had to work so many things out. The 7th house is the house of the public, and it shows how other people see them. And it has Mercury, or Neptune, which is why the whole public was enamored with them, and it was this big mysterious relationship that everybody wanted to learn about. The other thing is the 10th house, which is the house of career, has the south node there, and the south node relates to where we've been in past lives. And this shows that these two people together have worked in past lives together in some capacity, and they're here to do that again. Now, we can also use astrology charts to understand our children. I love it when people say to me, I have 3 children and they're all completely different. I say, well, of course, they all have different influences. Now, this is my daughter's astrology chart. She gave me permission to use it, and it helped me understand how to raise her. And one of the first things that we thought about when we had our child was, well, we're really not sure if we want to put her in public schools, so maybe we'll homeschool her. And then I looked at her astrology chart and I said, uh-oh. She's a Gemini sun sign in the 7th house. Geminis love people, love to communicate, and love friends. I said, I can't keep her at home all day with me. She's going to go crazy. The other thing I learned about her, with her moon in the 11th house, she has a craving for friendship. I thought, I have to put her in school. She needs friends. If I keep homeschool her, she's going to be, going crazy. I learned so much about her. The other neat thing is she's a Gemini. So Geminis love to play tricks on people. So I get my fair share of tricks played on me. But the neat thing is when I look at my chart and hers, I have my moon in Gemini, so I can get back at her really good. We have a lot of fun together. So you can use astrology to understand relationships with kids and how to raise them. Okay, now we're going to go on to looking at the eyes. Of course, when we talk about relationships, a lot of people say the first thing they remember about their partner is their eyes. Well, they are windows to the soul. Now, I am talking today about a study called rayed iris, which is very different from iridology. The only thing it has in common with iridology is that it uses the eyes to understand ourselves. And once again, if you want to know your life purpose, all you really need to do is look at your eyes, because The eyes have particular patterns in them that do reveal your life purpose in terms of what are your gifts and talents, what are your challenges. And they also explain our relationships. So let's look at this eye here for a moment. If you look at this eye, you actually see flower petals in this iris, okay? And the flower petals describe this iris. This is called a flower iris. And the life purpose of this eye is all about thinking about joy, creativity, and social ability. Now, if you think about how you feel when somebody brings you flowers, immediate joy and love, and it brightens up your day. That's the life purpose of a flower, is to bring joy and social ability to the group. And if you look outside, can anybody name how many different flower varieties there are in the world? There's thousands. And that's what the flower's about, is bringing to light thousands of methods of creativity, extremely creative. Now over here, all these little specks in the eye are what we call jewels. And the life purpose of a jewel iris is that they live life through the mind. And these are people who come here to live life through understanding the mind. They're extremely intelligent people who are always questioning what's going on, what's next. They want the answers. So we often find relationships between opposites. You see the flowers, creative and social, very at ease, and the jewel, who lives life through the mind, is very uncomfortable with the emotions. So immediately, these two people are attracted to each other because they have things to learn from each other. Here's two other iris types. Over here, we have the stream iris. And we call this the stream because it's just nicely woven fibers. And the stream relates to water. The life purpose of a stream iris is to bring healing and compassion to the world. Think about a hot day, and you're walking through the forest, and all of a sudden you come to a bubbling stream. And immediately you're like, oh, thank goodness, I can drink some water, I can cool off. If you want peace and calming, you usually want to hear water or a fountain. That's what these people are here to do. And the last iris type is what we call the shaker. And they have both flowers and jewels. Shakers are here to shake up the world. So I think of people like Dolores Cannon writing books on extraterrestrials and all kinds of stuff like that. They're here to shake up the status quo. They're 10 to 20, 30 years ahead of where society is. So they're often outcasts and oddballs because people say, oh, you're crazy. But these are people that tear down the status quo to bring in the new. So we need shakers. And once again, in relationships, the stream needs shaking up. Sometimes life gets a little dull for them, so they're attracted to the shaker. But the shaker's an extremist type, so they need some calming and balance. So they make a wonderful match. In relationships, we can also see through the eyes who's an introvert and who's an extrovert. Introvert is right here. This little ring around the iris shows they're introverted, and this iris is an extrovert. And it's very common in relationships to have one person that does all the talking and the other person that does all the listening. Who balances the checkbook in the relationship? Well, we have the right brain person and the left brain person. So we can tell from the eyes if you're right or left brain dominant. So in my relationship, this is how it works. This is actually my iris, and I'm totally right-brained. And so my husband says, when did you last balance the checkbook? I said, about 5 years ago. So luckily, he's the left brain one, and he does the checkbook balancing. So that's the eyes. Now we're going to move into palmistry, and we're going to have some fun. So the hands, once again, reveal our life purpose in the shape of the palm, the lines of your hand, the fingerprints, and hand psychology. So what kind of partner are you, and what does your life purpose show about that? I want you to pretend this is a hold-up, and hold up your hands, and I'm going to go to the audience and just pick out some things that I see going on with you. Have you ever noticed Some people always love to put their hands in their pockets. Okay? They're hiding something. Or they're more secretive with what they're doing. I remember going to business meetings with my dad, and all the men would be putting their hands in their pocket. I thought, what are they doing? You know, men are more apt to hide their feelings and things. So our hands show a lot about what's going on with us. So one of the things I can see right here, when our hands start coming in like this, a little bit of insecurity about our life purpose and about our abilities and things. The woman here is ready to take action. She's ready to go. And the person next to her, he wouldn't mind taking charge of the group. He's kind of a leader, but Garnett here has no desire to take charge of the group. He's like, I'll take care of myself, but don't ask me to lead other people with what's going on. Let's see some other things that we see. Yeah, a little insecurity there, not quite sure of her life purpose and how she's doing. Really interesting hands here. The smaller the hands, the actually bigger vision that the person has. And very impulsive right there. He's makes decisions real quick, so he needs to slow down and take a breather before he jumps into doing things. And let's see, one other thing that we'll pick out here. Let's see. And there's something about her home environment that she's not quite happy with, and I'm going to illustrate that up here. So when you learn some techniques of hand psychology, you can learn a lot about what's currently going on with the person, and we're going to see that up here right now. This is a water hand, and if you have had a reading this weekend, look at the people who are doing the readings at the lecture, at the conference this weekend. They probably have these long, beautiful fingers and long nails. This is the water hand, and their life purpose is about bringing out the emotions. And if you're in a relationship with a water person, have your Kleenex boxes ready. They're going to be expressing their emotions to you a lot. And who has the water hand? Lady Diana. So this is why I say we need to do the 6 paths. We looked at Lady Diana's astrology chart, and we saw that she's a Cancer, which is a water sign. In addition, she has a water palm. So now we're seeing a double whammy here. Extremely emotional person, very sensitive. And we see that so much was going on in her public life. It's very hard when you push a water person right out there in the public, and she had a hard time with it. And notice her 3rd and 4th finger touching almost. Very unhappy with her living environment. Okay? And we know that having to live with the Queen and everything going on, she was very unhappy with her living situation. Prince Charles, look at this, I love it. 3rd and 4th finger pretty close together. He wasn't happy either, okay? Just by looking at that when people hold up their hands. Also, very interesting, the distance, how close your thumb is held to the palm. The closer your thumb is when you hold it up, it shows that you really don't want to be in charge or be the leader. When people have a thumb like way down here, they want to take charge. So this was really revealing to me that Prince Charles doesn't really want to lead the country. And so that's pretty obvious. The purpose of the earth hand, don't you just want to touch that hand? It looks like the doughboy hand, doesn't it? You just want to go squeeze it. It looks really soft. Well, the purpose of the earth hand is the doer. This is the kind of hand, unlike the other one we saw, the water hand, doesn't mind going out and digging the ditch and doing the dirty work and getting the hands dirty and gardening. And that's why we call the purpose of the earth hand is to do. They're always do, do, do. So if you're married to an earth hand person, they're going to be the ones that clean the house and do the dishes and get everything done. So great. But the only problem is they never slow down. This palm actually belongs, once again, to Steven Spielberg. And he's the doer in Hollywood because he's the producer who's running around doing a million jobs. That's perfect for him. This is the air hand. Long fingers, long palm. For all the authors out there, you want to hook up with the air hand people because their life purpose is to connect people, places, and things. If you tell them you wrote a book, they're like, oh, I know where you should submit it. I know who you should call for a book signing and what to do. This is the fire hand. These are the people that you want to look to promote your book. The fire hand, the purpose of fire is to bring enthusiasm to life and say, go for it. They're enthusiastic about life, so they do great at promoting things like books. Okay, who's the hardest worker in the relationship? This is a fun thing you can do with the person next to you if they're open to it. Go ahead and press your thumb into the middle of their palm and see is it soft or is it hard? You know, you saw the doughboy hand, so just put your thumb in the middle there and press. Is it really hard or soft? What that tells us is if it's a really hard palm, they're the hardest workers in the relationship. They never take a break. If it's real soft, that's kind of the couch potato person, and they like to take it easy. And if it's too soft, you know, you got to get them off the couch and get them working in the relationship. Usually men, typically because they're out working through my 20 years of doing hand readings, have very hard palms and they need to take a break. Sometimes you find that in a woman too. It just depends. Now let's test our hand flexibility. And I'll tell you what this means in a minute. So if you hold your palm out straight, see how far down you can pull your fingers. How flexible. You can do that to yourself and then to your partner. I'll show you what real flexibility looks like. You should be able to, okay? That's extremely flexible. If they don't bend at all, that means there's no flexibility, and then you have in between. Do it to yourself and to a partner. What this shows is a couple things. If it's really rigid, the person's probably closed off to all their gifts and talents. They're not bringing out they're not testing out different waters. And it also means that you can just be narrowly focused. In other words, I'm an engineer and that's all I do. Now, very flexible, like mine, shows that you've got a lot of irons on the fire. You like to do a lot of different things, okay? And you're all over the place. Your mind says, you know what, there's nothing that I can't do. Okay, what does your love line say about you? Well, just like in astrology, we have lines, and the love line or the water line is the first line under the fingers. And those of you that have a straight line are pretty unemotional, pretty cool in relationships. And those of you that have a curved line are much more expressive of your emotions. So that's another line that you want to look at on your hands. Okay, so that's palmistry. Now, let's look a little at our past lives. When people come to me and say, I want to know what's going on in my relationships, I say, let's not start from today. Let's go back to your past lives, because you're the culmination of all your past lives. So when did our relationship patterns begin? Well, I put Atlantis up here, but after Charmaine's talk, I really have to put Lemuria up there, okay? Because the minute we started incarnating in bodies was when we began to set up our patterns. And remember, I said that the greatest tool for relationships and life purpose is other people, because other people set off our karma and help us understand ourselves. Edgar Cayce, who's I've read a lot and studied about, in one of his past life regression sessions with somebody, described karma as simply a set of beliefs and attitudes. And that is what continues to draw us to different people. It's those beliefs and patterns that explain our relationships. We have tons of karmic attractions, and there's various reasons for them. Sometimes it's unfinished business. You started something with someone in a past life and you didn't finish it. Love. Charmaine said this morning, love is all you remember. That's so true. So we're often drawn into a relationship because the love never died in the past life. It continues. That's the biggest one. Lessons to learn. Okay? We're drawn to people from past lives because we still have lessons to learn. Similar karmic lessons. We have the same lessons to learn and we're drawn together. Different roles to play. let's say in the past lifetime I was the mom and you were the child. You say, you know what, I'm sick of you bossing me around. Next lifetime I'm going to be the mom, and you're going to be the child. Repayment of good deeds. Somebody did some good deeds for you in a past lifetime and you want to repay them. Common missions. You've come together again because you are a light worker and you have the same mission. So most of you know how to access this past life information. You can do an Akashic record reading. You can do a past life regression to understand why you were brought together with somebody, and spontaneous recall. And that's why people are so important, because people trigger past life memories. Have you ever just met somebody and felt immediately at ease or started to remember a past life with them? It's a great way that you can delve into a past life. So sometimes we have obstacles in relationships and we can look to past lives to see why. Sometimes there's a role reversal problem where you were the parent in the past life, but this lifetime you're the child, but you still think you're the parent. Anybody experienced that with their kids? I had an interesting story where I was in a relationship with this man, and he was from a foreign country, so he didn't speak English quite well, and he was, trying to assimilate. So I just took him under my wing, and I basically did everything for him. And one day I was at a restaurant with him and some friends, and as usual, I was ordering for him. And my friend said, "Would you quit acting like his mother and let him order for himself?" Well, guess what? I was the mother in the past life. I couldn't let go of that role. Sometimes we have obstacles in relationships because we're holding on to past life wounds, and we need to figure them out. Or we still think it's payback time and we want to get revenge on the person. Or we want to keep things the same as they were in the past life, but nothing changes the same, so we need to move on and see that we're different people, and that can be an obstacle in relationships. Now, as we look at family and birth order, we have individual karma. We also have group karma. We've got family karma and country karma. So we've got a lot of things to look at. And family unlocks the mystery a lot about who we choose in relationships and why. So I like to look at famous people and why they chose their parents. Look at Mozart. Why did he choose his family? Well, obviously, Mozart came into this lifetime wanting to learn about music. One thing I learned when I studied his life is that his father was a very accomplished musician, and so was his sister. So he chose the amazing family that he did because his father, at the age of when Mozart was 4 years old, he was telling his father what notes to put down on the paper, and composed his first song at 4 with the help of his father and his sister. Wonderful choice of parents, and his life purpose was music, and that's why he chose the family he did. What about Henry and Edsel Ford? I grew up outside of Detroit, so I was very interested in the Ford family from a young age. And Edsel Ford, once again, chose the perfect parents because his father, Henry, obviously was the inventor of the car in the United States. He grew up with his dad working and tinkering on cars, just like Mozart grew up working on music with his dad. And many people don't know this, but Henry Ford was a true believer in reincarnation, and I just want to read you parts of this quote that he said. "I adopted the theory of reincarnation when I was 26. Religion offered nothing to the point. Even work could not give me complete satisfaction. Work is futile if we cannot utilize the experience we collect in one life in the next. When I discovered reincarnation, it was as if I had found a universal plan. I realized there was a chance to work out my ideas. Time was no longer limited. I was no longer a slave to the hands of the clock. Genius is experience. Some seem to think that it is a gift or talent, but it is the fruit of long experience in many lives." So Henry Ford was a great believer in that. So the importance of family relationships, they unlock the reason you choose your parents, and you unlock the mystery of your life purpose and your relationships. So basically, I tell people, learn from your family relationships, or else you marry your mom or your dad. So there was a young man looking to get married, and he asked his friend, every woman I bring home to my parents, my mother doesn't like. His friend said, that's easy. He said, all you have to do is find someone who's just like your mother. He said, well, I did that already, but my father didn't like that one. Okay, so we can also look at birth order to understand our life purpose and our relationship issues. And just one interesting one I'm going to point out is Prince William and Prince Harry. Prince William is the firstborn boy. Harry is the second-born boy. And they follow this so well because the firstborn boy is the more creative one, mentally introverted, the more peaceful, the calm one. And then the second-born boy, in the study that I use, is competitive and aggressive. And I learned some interesting things about Prince Harry. He spent time as an army pilot and used to brag about the fact that in combat he was able to fire at some Taliban members. He was all excited about that. He dressed up as a Nazi at a party and got in trouble for that. Second-born boy has a lot of emotional issues and needs to learn emotional control. So they're just a great study of boy 1 and boy 2. So numerology is another tool that we can use to understand our life purpose and our relationships. Your expression number comes from your name and describes the person you want to become. So when people ask me their life purpose, I say, let's get to the numbers, as well as relationships. So I've looked at some important people. William Jefferson Blythe, who you may not know, is actually Bill Clinton. His expression number, which comes from his name, came out to a 6. Hillary Diane Rodham, his wife, her expression number comes out to a 6 also. What a perfect match, because that means they want to be the same kind of people in life. And the number 6 is the healer, the teacher. They want to help people. So they went into politics together. Great example of a couple that got together with similar vibrations and living out their life purpose. What went wrong? Well, Lady Diana, if we look at her life path number, which comes from her birthday number, she comes to a number 7, which means she was really interested. Her life purpose was about the mind and understanding metaphysics and the big questions of life. Now, Prince Charles' life path number comes out to an 11, which actually shows that he was here to learn about intuitive abilities. Now, in numerology and relationships, to find what's missing or what's wrong in the relationship, one thing you can do is subtract the 2 numbers. So if we take 11 minus 7, the number is 4, which means what they need to bring into the relationship is stability. Now, if you're the Prince of England and you're trying to bring stability into your life, good luck. So I think that was one of the problems they had, was no stability, and that would have helped their relationship. A pair of peacemakers on the same path. Kasturba Kapadia, probably don't know who that was. That was actually Gandhi's wife. Her expression number, the person she wanted to be, was a number 1. And her life path number, which is what she was supposed to do this lifetime, was a number 3. Gandhi's expression number was a number 3. They were so much in alignment, even though it was an arranged marriage. It was obviously fateful that they got together because her life path and his expression number were the same thing. Also, his life path number, the number 9, is the number of the world leader, and her expression number, number 1, means she's also supposed to be a leader. Perfect match. How to make it work? Mary Kathleen Collins and Derek Delavan Harris. Probably don't know who that is. This is Bo Derek and John Derek. Why did I choose these people? Well, they actually had a marriage that lasted over 20 years. And I just wanted to show you her expression number was an 11. She wanted to be this intuitive, fairy-like creature this lifetime. His life his expression number was an 8. He wanted to be the businessman. Very different expression numbers. How did they make it work? 11 minus 8 is 3. 3 is creativity. So what did they do together? They made films together. They made it work. He was the money maker with all the films, and she got to be the creative actress. It worked out wonderfully. Another example of people on target with their life path, John Lennon's life path number was a 6. 6 is about bringing love into the world, and I think he did that through his songs. And Yoko Ono was a number 9, which says she came here to change the world. So I promised that in the booklet that I would tell you my secret method for finding a good match. You got to do the 6 paths. Check out all the charts and paths of your potential partner to see if it's going to work. Compare and contrast. Nothing's off limit, even your past lives. So my husband passed the test. You bet you, before I married him, I said, okay, we're going to do your astrology chart, your numerology. Let me look in your eyes. Let me see if it's going to work. He'll tell you it was pretty painless. It was fun and revealing. And of course, you can present it in a sneaky way and say, I've got this really neat self-awareness tool. You want to try it and see what we find out? And then you find out about the person if it's going to work. When we think about relationships, we often want to change the other person because they're the problem. And so after today, if you're still thinking it's time to change your partner, your boss, or your friend, I want you to consider this. What are you up against? 10 planets, 12 zodiac signs, the vibration of their name, all the patterns, beliefs, and understandings that they've built from 1,500 lifetimes, I don't know. So if you're willing to change all that, good luck. I think it's easier just to accept the person the way they are. So be a good marriage partner, or else, I'm just going to tell you a real quick story and then we're going to end it. There were 3 men that recently passed away, and they made it up to the gates with St. Peter. And Peter said to them, well, here in heaven, you do get a vehicle to go around in, just like you do on the earth plane. And he said the type of vehicle you get depends on how faithful of a husband you were. So he asked the first man to step forward. And he said, okay, I would like to know, were you faithful to your wife? And he says, St. Peter, I did the 6 paths with my wife. I checked out all her charts, and I saw that we were going to be a perfect match, and we were. We hooked up on everything, our astrology, our numerology. So I'm proud to tell you that I was faithful to her my whole life. He says, I love to hear stories like that. You know what? I am going to give you the latest Mercedes-Benz to drive around in. It's equipped with everything. You're going to love it. Wow, thank you, he says. He goes off in his totally loaded Mercedes-Benz. He asks the second man to step forward, and he comes forward and he says, well, St. Peter, he says, I did 3 of the paths with my wife. I checked out her astrology, her palmistry, and her eyes, but I didn't have time for the other 3, so I have to tell you, we weren't totally compatible. So a couple times I regressed and I wasn't faithful to her, maybe 3 or 4 times. He says, all right, well, you tried your best. I'm going to have to downgrade your vehicle, and I've got a Ford. You know, it's got power windows and air conditioning, so you'll be okay. Thank you. The third guy steps forward and he says, okay, tell me, were you faithful to your wife? And he says, well, I didn't know about the 6 paths, St. Peter. I didn't check out anything. I didn't know about her charts. So after I married her, I found out we really weren't compatible. So I have to say I was probably unfaithful more than I was faithful. You know, I'm sorry, I didn't know about the 6 paths. And he says, well, I'm sorry to hear that, but, you know, here you go. I've got a 20-year-old Jeep. It doesn't have air or anything, and, you know, it's kind of rusty, so good luck, you know, it might conk out on you. So the guy takes off, and so these 3 guys have been in heaven for a couple weeks, and they come and they meet up at a red stoplight. And the man driving the Mercedes-Benz is just in tears. And the other 2 guys are looking at him like, well, what is your problem? You've got the fully loaded Mercedes-Benz. We're in these clunkers. What are you crying about? And he says, I just met up with my wife at the last stoplight, and she was on a skateboard. So I encourage you to do the 6 paths before you get married. Do we have time for a few questions? No, we don't. So I'll answer questions back at the table. Thank you.